is the international relations theory of realism? It is a theory that is used constantly within international political journals, lectures, and books. I have found from my personal experience that this theory is often explained very poorly, and many students fail to understand and basically believe that theories are too difficult to understand. This video will explain what are the key parts of realism, which will help you understand other international relations theories, as well as help you understand complex issues within IR. One of the key problems with how international relations theories is taught is it often goes into excessive detail into different strands of theories, without really explaining the core principles of such theories. To explain this, we first need to understand the basic philosophy of a realist mindset. For realists, they essentially believe that within the current world, there is no world government which maintains law and order. Countries essentially live in anarchy, what realists largely call an anarchic international system. Before we continue, think about this for a second. What does this mean? This means no law and order, no rules. Every state is essentially selfish, looking out for its own survival, in a brutal anarchic world where the winner takes all. It's also important to note that realists argue that states cannot be sure about the intentions of other states. Now, this is due to the lack of rules and anarchy of the international system. Therefore, a state can never know if a state is friendly, aggressive, or will look to try and backstab. As such, states are highly suspicious of other states. Now let's apply this to a hypothetical example. Imagine you're in a post-apocalyptic world where there are no rules, no government, and a lone stranger approaches you. Do you really trust this person? Can you? What stops him from shooting you dead when your back is turned? And perhaps he's thinking the exact same of you. In reality, you would either avoid each other or you would attack him before he has a chance to fight back. This is essentially the world in which states exist in, without, of course, the post-apocalyptic part. Therefore, countries are on their own, totally dependent on themselves. This theory fundamentally takes a lot of inspiration from Thomas Hobbes, an English philosopher, who wrote a lot about the state of nature, aka anarchy, and how man would act within this. Realism essentially applies this to the state level. And let's put aside philosophy for one moment and instead look at a more modern version of realism called structural realism. And let's unpack it. There are a few key assumptions to know about structural realism. First, states are rational actors and value their survival over all else. In essence, this explains why states build armies, go to war, build alliances, because of the fear of destruction that drives them to do this. States wish to survive and not be destroyed by their neighbours. The rational actor is also key here. States are seen as rational because they do not act irrationally and will always act within their own self-interests, hence the term self-help system. A good quote that demonstrates this is from John Mearsheimer, one of the leading figures within realism, who states survival dominates other motives. So the implication of this is that if two states have nukes, for instance, they won't nuke each other because of fear of retaliation and obviously the destruction that would cause. Another example would be a weaker state wouldn't risk attacking a stronger state, and maybe two powerful states would avoid conflict with each other because of the fear of loss. Although, to be noted, each one of these points is highly debatable. Coming back to rationality for a second, this is also extremely important to understand the realist mindset. Fundamentally, realists discount any differences in government type. So that could be a democracy, dictatorship, religion, identity, culture, all this stuff. This does not matter, and it's not important within international politics according to realism, because they believe that all states have the same interests, and therefore all that other stuff mentioned doesn't matter, and they won't study it or mention it within their books or journals. Another key component is the structure within which states live. States live in a world of constant competition of material gains. This could be land, military power, and, of course, economic resources. States are always trying to maximize these material gains, often at the expense of other states. What we can say, though, is that although this anarchic system exists, it does have a hierarchical structure. This is because, although states may have the same interests, what differentiates themselves is power, hence the structure. Hegemony is also key goal for these states to achieve. Hegemony means basically becoming an extremely powerful country, so powerful that no other country on the planet or your region will be a threat to you. So to put simply, countries can essentially be ranked. And if we look at the world currently, we can see that the US is currently the strongest state, aka the hegemon, and hence the term unipolar system, because it's the only major world hegemon that we have currently, followed by smaller regional hegemons like China and Russia, etc. Of course, it's all debatable. Prior, however, to 1991, it was the Soviet Union and the USA, and this was obviously the Cold War, and this can be called a bipolar world because there were two global hegemons. And before this, there was a multipolar world, where there wasn't really a single dominant power. For instance, we can look at the 19th century, where massive European empires essentially dominated large sections of the globe, such as the British Empire, French Empire, Russian Empire, Ottoman, Austrian, German, etc. Now, another key point that is always brought up is what about international institutions? The UN, the EU, NATO, WTO, Warsaw Pact. Realists have an answer for this again. Ultimately, structural realists see the reason for states being inside such institutions is because they wish to control them and shape them for their interests. So, these institutions are only held together within the interests of states. So an organization like NATO, for instance, this is only held together, as realists see it, as it allows America to have bases around the world and weaker states to align with NATO because it allows them to have military technology, training, and protection from other states, most notably Russia. To put simply, being a strong state in a realist eyes is a very good thing, and being a weak state is not a good thing. A goal for a strong state is to stay strong and keep the weak states weak, and a weak state is to become strong and ultimately a hegemon. So now we've covered the basics, but what further reading is great to get into the mindset of a realist? I would highly recommend two books. First is John Mearsheimer's book, The Tragedy of World Politics. This book, I would argue, is a must for anyone who wishes to study international politics or anyone who's just interested in world affairs. Within this book, it covers all the points I mentioned, but also expands on them and provides evidence to support the theory. Another key book is Kenneth Walt's Theory of International Politics. This book I would recommend as it is a major text which brought realism to light again. However, I would suggest to read John Mearsheimer's book first, as I primarily believe Mearsheimer's book is a lot better written than Waltz's book. Within the description, I'll provide a number of links and citations to all the work I have used, which incidentally are great reading for improving your understanding of realism. I know I've missed a lot out, and I will publish a video applying this theory to a case study which will hopefully clear up anything that you may still find confusing. Overall though, thanks for watching.